In this video, I'm going to give you a guide to the most common questions that Royal Mail ask in their interviews, and I'm going to help you plan really great answers that will get you hired at Royal Mail. So let's look at why you should actually watch this video. What are you going to learn by watching this, and how is it going to help you? So firstly, Royal Mail is going to have some process of scoring your interview answers. So when you answer a question, they need to have a clear and fair process to decide who gave the best answers and who is the strongest candidate. And in order to do well, you have to be well prepared. So the better you prepare, the higher your scores are going to be. And this video will help you do that. The other thing that it will do is it will show you the most commonly asked questions. So what I've done is I've looked at lots of different people who've had experiences of interviews with Royal Mail. I've spoke to people who've been interviewed, asked about what questions they have been asked, and got together the ones that come up most often and the ones that are most difficult. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you plan great answers. So feel free as you're going through to be planning out your answers, maybe bullet pointing some things and thinking about the sort of things you're going to say. Because in the interview, you might not have long to think about your answers. They may just throw questions like, why do you want to work for Royal Mail? What do you know about Royal Mail? Give me an example of a time you worked in a team. Give me an example of a time that you worked to meet a deadline. All these questions, you might only have a few seconds to think about it and you'd be under pressure. So it's much easier to actually have planned your answers rather than making it up on the day. And this video will help you do that. On the other hand, here is some things that you need to be aware of. So before you go to your interview, make sure you don't fail it straight off. So the first way you can fail your interview is by not being prepared. If you don't prepare for your interview, you're not going to be successful. It's going to massively reduce your chances of getting the job. There may be several people going for the job, and if one person's done lots and lots of work and is really well prepared, they might stand out above you. So you want to do your best to do as much preparation as you can, and this video will help you do that. The other thing people screw up is they forget to bring their documents. So they'll ask for things like ID, driving license, proof of address. They'll tell you what you need to bring. If you don't bring those documents, they probably will not even interview you. And so you've wasted their time, you've wasted your own time. So make sure you definitely check that you've brought what they ask for. The other thing is if you say that you're not able to work some of the times that they've advertised, it's very, very unlikely that they'll hire you. You want to be very clear about your ability to work at the times they need and actually be useful to their business. And the other thing people can do is inappropriate dress. Royal Mail state in their website and their guidance for interviews that you should be dressing smart and professional. So it's not a bad idea to wear a suit or business professional dress to go to your interview. Definitely don't turn up in casual clothes. Should be at minimum smart casual or formal. And that's the key things that you could do to fail your interview. So let's start moving on and look at one of the questions that comes up very often. And the first question I want to go through with you is, can you tell me about your driving record and experience? And this may seem like an easy question, but it's a really important question to answer well. If you're applying for a driving job, it's super important. If you're applying for a job at Royal Mail, they may ask about this as a way to gauge how you're going to get to work in the morning. So the way you answer it is you start by being honest. It's essential that you're honest. You could blow the whole interview by being dishonest. They will check your license. You will have to hand over all your documents to Royal Mail when you start, and they may have also scanned a lot of it before you even started the interview. So it's essential that you're honest at this. You can, however, exclude spent convictions. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So the first thing to be aware of is they can and will check. The second thing is if it's on your license, so if you have any points or anything like that, you must say, because if they ask you about your driving record and experience and you miss out things that they can check about you, then that's going to be a very bad idea. Though legally, you don't need to declare any convictions that are spent. So spent convictions are gone. And typically, and you want to check for if you have specific points on your license, whether they're spent or not, though as a rough guidance, you're looking at around 5 years, but definitely check for your specific case. The other thing you can do is to start using some phrases for a perfect answer. Some of these might apply to you, some of these don't. The more you can say, the better your answer is. So full clean driving license is the perfect answer. Then no endorsements. If you don't have any endorsements, make a point of saying that. Also, regardless, you can say how many years experience you have if it's a good number. If the answer is 1 or 2 years experience, you don't want to draw lots of attention to that. But if you've been driving 20 years or 30 years, just say it, because that's a lot of experience. You could say a phrase more broadly, which is that you're experienced car and van driver, if that applies to you. If you've never made an insurance claim, that's something else that you could say. So there's lots that you can say about this. Another one you may even throw in there, if it's true, is no parking tickets, because that's also evidence of being a very good driver. So pick as many of those as you can that apply to you and say those when you're asked this question, and that'll get you a good score on this. And really, this is a pass-fail one. They're going to not accept people with very, very high levels of points on their driver's license. They usually set a bar, or if you've got a poor driving record, that's going to count against you. But if you've got a decent driving record, this is how you survive the question. So let's move on to the next one. How would you deal with an upset or angry customer? And unfortunately, working Royal Mail, this is something that is going to happen. You may be running late. The customer may be unhappy that they paid for a certain service to get in 24 hours. There's been delays, or they've misunderstood something. You don't know. Something's went wrong. How do you deal with it? And I'm going to show you the process that you go through to answer this question well. So the first thing you say is that you would anticipate it. So if you're running late, if there is a problem where it's supposed to be 24, but you're delivering it the next day, you're going to know that. And so when you see the customer, you're going to be anticipating that they may be disappointed, and so you're ready. The next thing you say is that you're going to de-escalate. So if the customer's very upset, you're not going to argue back with them. You're not going to be rude. You're going to be very calm and very professional. So use the word de-escalate. You're going to listen to the customer. If they want to make a complaint, you want to take a little bit of time to listen to them. It's important that they are heard. And then what you do is you use the 3 A's. And so 3 A's nice and easy to remember. So when you're asked what you're going to do, you just list these 3 A's. So they're apologize, admit. So if you're at fault, for example, you're running late, you admit, unfortunately, I'm running late today. I do apologize for that. Or there's been problems at the delivery office. One of our machines broke and it slowed things down. We're really sorry about that. So about taking ownership and responsibility where you are responsible for the mistake. That may be the case. That's the second thing you do. And then act. So if the customer says, I want you to feed this back to your supervisor, or I would like to raise a complaint, or how do I do this? You take the next step. So you act on what they are telling you, and you go away and do that. You try and solve the problem to the best of your ability within Royal Mail's policies. So basically, say those 4 things and then talk about the 3 A's, and that's how you get through this question successfully. So let's move on. The other question that they may ask you is, what times can you work? And of course, if you answer this badly, it's going to hurt you. So let's look at the key aspects. So yes is the one that you want to say as much as possible. If they ask about any specific times, you want to try your best to say yes. The more you say yes, the better. You want to be open-minded. So you don't want to say, I don't want to work these times, or I can't do Wednesdays, or I never want to work on a weekend. If you're close-minded, it's going to be basically showing them that if they hire you, they've got someone they have to try and work around, and you're going to be a bit of a nuisance. The next thing is flexibility. The more flexibility you show in your answer, the better your answer is going to be. And fundamentally, you have to show you're committed to your job. If you give lots of reasons of all of the times that you can't work, and a lot of people answer this question by just saying, I can't do this time, can't do this time, can't do this time, but I can do all the other times. That's not a good way to answer it. It suggests maybe there's lots and lots of things that are way more important in your life, and you don't really care about your job. And that's not the impression you want to give in an interview. So best answer would have things like, I'm available for all advertised hours. So you've applied for a job and it will say what hours they want you to work. Say that you can work the ones on the job advert, because that's the first thing they want to check. Then you could say some better things, some things that would be helpful. So you're saying you're happy to work the advertised hours, though during peak times, like Christmas, you're happy to work more hours because there's going to be huge demands on the postal service then. You could say that you're open to overtime. You may not be offered overtime. You may be offered overtime. If you are, you get paid more. But just say in your interview that you're open to it, because that's a real positive. You could also use the phrase that you're happy to help out when needed. So if you're short-staffed, you might be able to take someone's route on a day where you're not working. You could jump in and be helpful that way. You could also say that you can usually work at short notice. That's another thing that you could volunteer. So these are the key aspects that you get in an answer for this, and you can score quite highly by showing lots of flexibility and being someone that is useful. The last thing you can also say is that you can work weekends, particularly Saturday, which is, of course, important to the Royal Mail. So let's move on and look at the next question, which is, what would you do if you damaged a package or a customer's property? And I've heard some really terrible answers to this in the past. So I want to show you the sort of things that you want to be saying. So the first thing is They are looking for you to take responsibility. You did the damage. And it could happen. It's not impossible that you could just be carrying a package and there could be something on the floor and you trip and you fall. And it's not your fault necessarily. You didn't do anything wrong, but ultimately it was you that damaged it, even though it might not have been your particular fault. But you have to take ownership of the fact. You can't just go, well, I'm just going to ignore this. I didn't mean to trip and it just happened, so it's someone else's problem. They want to see someone take responsibility. They want to see an apology, that if you've damaged something on the way to a delivery, that you're going to apologize to the customer. You're going to show them what can be done and support the customer to get what they're entitled to. And the next thing, they are screening for integrity. So if you say something that shows a lack of integrity, that could be the end of your interview, really. That if you suggest that you don't have honesty and you won't take responsibility or give a bad answer here, it's a big problem. So let's look at the sort of things that you can say. So firstly, be very clear that you would take responsibility. If you damage something, you're horrified and really not happy with that, and that's a really bad thing to do. But ultimately, it happened and it's your responsibility to deal with. The next thing is that you would issue a very sincere apology. You'd, of course, report it to management so they know what's happened. You would report immediately. That's a clear thing that you must mention. And that you'll follow all of the procedures that are active at the current time with Royal Mail, and you will use the training that you've been given and follow exactly what you've been taught to do. There are some things that people say that are really, really bad. So even if you say these things, but you seem unconcerned, that doesn't look very good. You have to be almost shocked to hear this and really horrified at the idea of actually damaging someone's property. You want to show that emotion. The next thing that people do is they make up their own policies. They would say, well, I would do this. And it's, well, that's not necessarily what you're supposed to do. Don't just make it up. Do what you're supposed to do. Say that you'll follow your training, not make up your own policies. You have not been appointed as chief executive. You don't get to decide these things. The next thing people do is they go, I'd offer to pay for it. Well, that's very nice. But then when you find out that it's an antique and it's worth £37,000, are you going to hold up that offer? The next thing that you definitely don't want to say is give the idea that this is something that's probably going to happen. You want to give the impression that it's something you never want to happen. And the worst thing you can do is ever suggest that it's not your problem, that I would take it to my manager and give it to them. And then what happens? They have to deal with it. You want to consult, you might say you consult your manager if you're unsure, but you wouldn't just give it to them, just shove it in front of them and say, your problem now, you're more important, you're paid more than me, you deal with this angry customer. That's the wrong answer. So go through what's on the arrow and show that you're taking responsibility and that you're going to show leadership and integrity in this matter. So that's how you answer that question. That doesn't matter whether you're applying as a postman, whether you're working mail sorting, any job that you're in contact with packages, you could have this question asked to you. Right, next one is, what do you know about Royal Mail? Obviously, if you turn up for a Royal Mail interview and you don't even know the basics about the company, that's not going to look good. So I'm going to run through the key things that you need to know about the company and show you how you can answer this question to succeed. And you will get all of the facts that you need. And you can even screenshot this page once I put up all the facts so that you've got a list of things that you can talk about. And you can also do your own reading around this, but it'll give you a good structure. So the first thing you do when you're asked this question is you say the obvious things, say the things that everybody knows. Because if you don't know the basics, it looks very bad. So make sure you cover the basics. Then show that you've done some research, so you've read a little bit and you actually have a bit more knowledge than someone who has never actually bothered to do any research. You know, the ordinary man in the street. They would know what Royal Mail does, but they wouldn't know the different businesses. But you need to know that. And then to really show off, you want some good knowledge, some really great facts that only people that have spent some real time researching the company would know. And I'm going to give you all these sort of facts that you could talk about. So the first thing you always do is show the obvious. So you could say something very, very, very simple, like it's a postal service and a courier. That is their fundamental business. They consist of things like depots, sorting centres, delivery offices, post boxes, and they're all over the country. They cover the entire length and breadth of the UK with the core Royal Mail services, but they also go further afield, and we'll look at what else they do in the world. They specialise in letter and parcel delivery. That's what their business is based around. They are moving to be parcel-led. The number of letters being delivered is going down each year, but the number of parcels with online shopping has been going up and up. So they are now focusing heavily on parcels. You must be clear and don't make this mistake. The post office is a separate company. Royal Mail and post office are not the same business. Be clear that they are not the same thing. It looks very bad in an interview if you think that they are the same thing. They have what's called the universal service obligation. So unlike their competitors like DHL, TNT, Hermes, and all these other companies, they have to deliver to every single UK address. So if someone sticks a first-class stamp on an envelope and puts it in a post box, any UK address they can deliver to, and that could be somewhere right at the very, very tip of Scotland, way up in the islands, that still gets delivered for the same price as someone sending a letter from one part of London to another. It's all the UK covered, and they are the only delivery service that has that universal service obligation, and it sets them apart. They are specialized in last mile, which is where it's very, very easy to say, take some 1,000 packages from, say, London to York, and you just get one big truck and you take it all the way there. What's difficult is getting it from a delivery office to hundreds and hundreds of different houses, going up every little different street. That's the most expensive and most difficult part of delivery, that's called last mile. And so last mile is a big part of what Royal Mail does. It's getting it right to the customer's doorstep. The next thing you could talk about is that they own GLS Group. That's their global logistics business that is very heavily involved in parcels across the whole of Europe and wider. So if you're in the UK and you want to send a parcel to, let's say, Brussels, it could go through GLS Group. They also have Parcelforce. That's their courier business. It's not just a postal service. They also have a big courier business. They were founded, and it depends on which way you look at it. They trace their origins all the way back to 1516, where they were founded by King Henry. And if you want to think about the more modern post service, you're talking about 1635. That's when ordinary people could post letters, and I had a retail business. So that's the real modern Royal Mail started to come into existence around 1635, but the very basics trace down to 1516. It has now been privatized. There's a big process of privatization. It's now not owned by the government, and it's floated on the London Stock Exchange, and a lot of the shares are owned by people who work at Royal Mail. They also have special delivery. That's one of their key services. And I would recommend that you make sure that you know their current products. So look on the Royal Mail website and see all the products. For example, they might have Track 24 as one of their big products now. Make sure you know exactly what all of the products are and having an idea about what the different services provided are. The next thing that I would suggest as a top tip is you can take the time to read the Royal Mail annual report. And I don't mean read every page. I mean just skim through it and pick out some facts, and that'll tell you up-to-date things, what the Royal Mail is focusing on, what went well last year, what their business actually does, where they make their money, all these sort of things. And you get an introduction by the chief executive telling you all about what's going on. And so it's a good idea to skim read that, and you'll get some facts, and mention at your interview that you read the annual report, because that shows that you've really done some good research. So that's how you succeed in this question. Let's move on to look at some other questions. So what would you do if a customer refused to sign for delivery? And to be honest, this question really is a trick question. They're looking for people to answer it wrong, and that's a problem. So the thing that you say is that you would calmly explain the requirements. So if something has to be signed for, it has to be signed for. You can't just refuse to sign for it and then expect to get a delivery. It's important that you are clear about explaining the requirements calmly and politely. The next thing you do is you make sure that Royal Mail is informed of this, so that there's a record of the fact that there's a refused delivery. Then what you do is you be clear that you're not permitted to deliver without signature, because it could be that you deliver it, you don't get a signature, the person who sent it has asked for a signature that you can't provide, and that package is insured for quite a lot of money. It might have £5,000 or £2,500 insurance on it, and you've handed it over to someone who you've no idea who they are, and that could be very valuable or very sensitive, very private documents that have to be delivered to a specific address and in the right way. So you need a signature. So just be clear about the fact that you can't deliver something that requires a signature with someone refusing to provide one. So don't get caught out by this trick. The next one is they sometimes ask about your fitness or about lifting things. And it's not a difficult question, really, but you want to think about how you'll answer it. So obviously, if you're applying for a delivery job, you're going to be walking quite a lot. Even if you're driving, you're going to be in and out. And when you add up the total distance walked, it can be surprising how much it is. So they may ask things like, how do you keep fit? And so you don't need to be an athlete to work for Royal Mail, but you have to be aware of the fact that you might be walking for 6 to 8 hours a day. So you can say basic things like you regularly walk, you're quite happy walking long distances. You could say a phrase like, I maintain a decent level of fitness. Of course, look at yourself and quite critically and think about, are you fit enough to do this job, walking a very long distance? Is that something you're comfortable with? If you are, be very confident about that in your interview. Any sports that you do, mention those. That's a good way of keeping fit. If you do happen to have a gym membership, you might not. If you do, that's just something that you might want to mention in that question. The next one is they may ask you about lifting things safely. They, one, need to check that you can actually do the job. So, for example, if you have very serious back injuries and lifting is going to cause you a lot of pain and discomfort and difficulty, then they're going to think that perhaps this job isn't right for you. And in fact, it wouldn't be right for you. So you want to be clear, if this is true, that you're physically able to lift packages. And you can use that phrase, that I'm physically able to lift the packages that you would expect to go through Royal Mail. You could say something like that you can carry a 16 kilogram bag comfortably, because that's what the maximum weight of the bag is set at. So if you're comfortable carrying 16 kilograms, that's a good number to mention. You could say if in past you've ever had any training on how to do lifting properly, you could say that you've completed manual handling training. That's quite reassuring. And then you can mention that you use safe lifting techniques. So explain the basic ones, that you look at the thing that you're lifting, you assess it. Is this something that I can lift on my own? Do I need to get help with this? That when you do lift it, you make sure you've got the right grip, you adopt a stable position, you look at where you're carrying it, you make sure you have a clear path, and that you don't bend your back, you don't lift with your back, you use your waist to support it, you bend down with your knees, lift with your knees, not your back. These basic techniques for safe lifting, you can talk them through and make sure you're confident about that. So let's move on to the next question. They may ask you towards the beginning of the interview to tell me a bit more about yourself. For many people, this is a wasted opportunity. They just don't answer it very well. And so to be successful on this, it's a very good idea to actually plan out your answer. So the key things you want to get in there is, firstly, your experience. You want to say what experience you actually have. And I'm going to show you what things you can mention. Your personal qualities and the key ones that are going to make you better for your job. I'm going to show you those. And then this is also a good opportunity to explain your interest in the role towards the end of your answer. The first thing you do is you talk about your past work experience. So name the previous jobs that you've had, and you want to do something to link them to Royal Mail. You want to focus on the most relevant. So if you have been involved in any customer service jobs, got any delivery experience, or if you're applying for a driving role, any driving jobs that you've had in the past, you could link that together. The next thing you can do is you can say the qualifications that you've got. Some people applying for the job may not have any qualifications or limited qualifications. So if you've got some qualifications, that's a real positive for you. Or any licenses. If you're applying for a driving job, this is the point where it's good to be clear about the fact that you hold all of the required licenses. You've got a good, clean driver's license that you could mention. Some qualities that you could talk about is that you're very reliable. That's going to be extremely important in the Royal Mail. That you're very professional. You're going to represent the organization positively, and that you're someone who always gets the job done. So if you're just, a few packages short and it comes to your finishing time, you're going to just go and get those done because you always get your job done. You take pride in that. Then you can start talking about your interest in the role. You might say things like, I always wanted to work for Royal Mail, or it's been an ambition of yours to join the Royal Mail, and that's the reason why you've applied for this job, that you love working outside, you're a very active, hands-on person, and this job appeals to you for that reason. Or you could talk about the importance of providing an essential service for the community, and that's something that you're interested in doing and part of the reason why you're applying for Royal Mail. So I would definitely have in your head how you're going to introduce yourself at your interview, and I would mention as many of these as you feel is appropriate to you. So a good idea is to actually plan this one out and be ready for it. So let's look at another question that could come up. what would you do if you are running late when on delivery? And this is really a question where they're looking for people almost to give the wrong answer so they can say, well, that's not good. They don't want to hear the wrong answer, so I'm going to show you the things that you should say. So the first thing is you emphasize safety. So when you're running late on delivery, you can't break speed limits, you can't rush, you've got to be accurate. So the first thing you emphasize is that it's important to stay safe and that you can't just make things happen faster without considering safety. Then you say that you always work as fast as you can, you're very organized, you have the packages organized in a way that's going to help you deliver them quickly. You've planned out your route, you know exactly where you're going, you've learned the route, you've got good knowledge of the geography. So that's going to help you not run late as often as possible. You're going to be communicating. So if you are running late, you're going to make sure that people know about it. You know, if there's been a traffic accident and you've got caught up, you're going to pass that back so people know how to plan. And so these are the key aspects of this. Make sure you're clear about safety, communication, and that you always work fast and safely. And then the last thing you talk about is customer care. If you are running late, you want to apologize to customers and be preemptive and proactive in addressing any issues that this could present, especially if there's guaranteed deliveries that you're also going to be aware of. So mention these 4 ideas and you will succeed in this question. The thing that people can get wrong is they forget to worry about safety and they forget the impact that this could have on customers. And that's a key aspect of a good answer. Then they may ask you, and this one comes up all the time, why do you want to work for Royal Mail? And this is, of course, a very personal question. And I can't tell you why you want to work for Royal Mail, but I can give you some inspiration of some things that you might want to say. So the easiest thing to do is to think about what would you enjoy about working at Royal Mail. If you're going to work here and you're applying to join the Royal Mail, there must be a reason. There must be something that you think you would enjoy about the job. Is it the hands-on nature of it, the manual working? Is it an organization that you really like? These are things you could talk about. You could talk about that you want to be working outside, you want to keep active, that's something that's important to you. This is one thing in many. You may talk about the social importance of a postal service and how they're delivering an essential service to the community, and that's something you want to be part of. You could think about why you've applied for Royal Mail and not a competitor. You may have worked for competitors in the past, and you may talk about the positives of Royal Mail and be really enthusiastic about it. And whatever you do when you're answering this question, make sure that you're enthusiastic. Without the enthusiasm, it's not going to go well. So some other things you might talk about is if you see yourself joining Royal Mail and working there for a long time, if you see this as a long-term career, a very stable career, you could mention that. If you care about the impact on your community, the importance, if you're, say, in a rural area, that connecting to the rest of the world, that service that Royal Mail is providing, and you're passionate about that, talk about it. If you know people that work at Royal Mail, you don't have to name them, of course, but you can talk about that you know people that work here and think about the positive things that they've said about the company and why they've suggested that you should apply for the job. You may talk about that you like interacting with the public, meeting new people, getting involved in the community, being an important figure in the community, that's something that you value. And also Royal Mail, frankly, has a fairly competitive offer. Generally, it's one of the better jobs within this sector. The conditions are not as good as they used to be in the good old days, but compared to their competitors, it's better to work for Royal Mail than some of these other delivery companies. And you can talk about how the offer is very, very competitive and that you feel that this is going to attract the best people. And so that's some of the things you can talk about. I definitely have an answer written out to this. So write maybe a paragraph and then I would learn an answer so you're ready to go. Because if you don't have a good answer to this, it's really negative. So feel free to screenshot, take some time, write it out on a piece of paper and learn it and practice it a little bit. And that will really have a big impact on your interview. So let's move on to some other ones that are quite annoying, which is like, describe a time you worked well in a team. The reason that this question can be quite annoying is you sometimes draw a blank in the interview. They ask you, describe a time you worked well in a team. And it's like, I can't think of any times. Or you think of one, you go, that's not a great example. So this is one you want to think about your time before you go to the interview in case they ask about it. Because if you don't have one planned, whatever you think up on the spot's probably not going to be very good. So I'll give you some ideas of some areas you might find an example So that'll help you think up your example. And I'm going to show you, when you've thought of your example, the structure that you use to answer it really well. So you might think about a time where a new colleague joined somewhere that you're working and how you mentored and supported them to be good at their job. And that's one way that you contributed to your team. So it could be an example from work. It could be an example if you've done sports, if you were a team captain or involved in any sort of sporting thing where you are working as part of a team. That's somewhere you can take inspiration from. Helping another team member where you fixed a mistake, so something went wrong and you worked with the team to support and fix that problem. Could be where you organize some sort of event. That's a great place where you are working well in a team, or you led a project or some change and you worked with other people. These can be some ideas. And when you've got your idea, the way you answer it is with the STAR technique. So S for situation, T for task, A for action, R for result. So that's what we mean by the STAR method. And so you just tell them each of these things, and that will give you a brilliant structure. So the situation you think about, when did you have to work in a team? Just simply say, was it at your job? Name what the job was. That simple level of detail, just where did this happen? Then the task is, what did the team need to accomplish? So what was the point? What did you want to actually do? And so that's your task. Then the action is, what did you do as part of a team? And what actions did you take to ensure success? So what was it that you did with your team that made a good thing happen? And then the result is, what brilliant result did your team achieve? Make sure that the example that you pick, teamwork happens and then something good happens. It improves something for a customer. It fixes a problem. Someone gets better at their job, and the team works better because of it. These sort of things are things you can talk about. So that's a structure that you'll use. And there's quite a few tell me about a time questions that are going to come up. So I'd have one prepared for how you work well in a team, use the STAR technique, and you'll be fine with this one. The other one that comes up is also working with deadlines. So let's look at that one in just a second. And fundamentally, what Royal Mail are looking for is how you talk about your teammates. So they're thinking, if you're going to join their team, how do you talk about people you've worked with before? What attitude do you have to people? Are you someone that works well in a team? Can you collaborate with others and work together? Are you judgmental of others? Are you going to be a positive part of the team, or are you going to be a problem? That's what they're screening for with this question. So as I said, we're going to look at an example of when you work to a tight deadline. That's another one that Royal Mail are quite keen on. So I'm going to show you a structure and give you an example of how you could answer this. And then you just have to look through your life, your professional life, and think about any job that you've ever had where you've had some sort of time pressure, where something has to be done by a specific date, and how you dealt with it. So let's look at a delivery specific one. So situation, then task, action, result, STAR technique, same thing. So the situation, while working as a delivery driver for a courier company, regularly work to very tight deadlines. What's the task? Had to deliver between 100 and 120 parcels per day. So that's a lot, and you're going to have to be managing your time well to be able to do that. What actions did you take? So you would list all the things that you did to make sure that you met this deadline. So you arrive at the depot early to set up, carefully plan your route, sort the packages so they're in a good order, so you're not having to waste time looking through all of them to find the one that you need. You walk at a brisk pace. So you walk fast, you get your job done quickly. Result, consistently completed my route on time and never returned undelivered packages or parcels to the depot. So you're not going, well, I haven't been able to finish my route in time, I'll do it tomorrow, because that's not delivering the best customer service. So this is a perfect example of, you've got a deadline. What did you do? How did the things that you do actually make a successful outcome? And that's what the results got to be. So basically, pick a deadline you had in your career that you met and that you did successfully, and then just say what you did to actually meet that deadline. And that's how you get through this question. So let's move on to a safety question. So they sometimes ask about van safety check if you're doing a driving job. And this is an easy one to answer if you know how to answer it. So the fundamental thing is complete the DVLA daily walk around check. So that's how you do a safety check. And the DVLA tells you exactly how to do it. And I'm going to put a link in the description to the DVLA's guidance on how to do a walk around check. So just look at that. It's fairly obvious things, checking that the mirrors aren't cracked and that the handbrake's working, and really fundamentally simple things. Read the link in the description. Just say that you're going to use the walk around check procedure and be aware of roughly the things that are in it. And that's how you get through that. As a bonus, before we finish, here's some questions that you may want to ask at the end of your Royal Mail interview. So definitely ask them, what are the next steps in the hiring process? What happens after this interview? 1, you want to know. 2, it shows that you really care about getting the job. Then you could say is, what would you suggest I research or learn to be prepared should I be successful? Make a commitment. If they say, you need to look at this, or I would learn about this, say that you're going to do it. Show that you actually care about being prepared for your job. You might want to ask about what the training program's like and be really interested in your training. Show that that's something that you value and you're looking forward to doing some training. You may want to ask them what's your favorite thing about working at Royal Mail, and agree with them that that's a really good thing and you would enjoy that. And then also try and invent one question on the day. So they're also talking to you. Anything they say that you're wondering about, check if it's an appropriate question, and then you could ask that. So before we finish, one thing that I want to make sure that you know is never ask about holidays. So if you're thinking about, I've got a holiday booked in 2 weeks' time or a month's time, will I get time off? Don't ask that at your interview. Never go in an interview and ask about time off. That's like going to fail your interview straight away. And never ask about pay. You should figure this out for yourself, have an idea about it. Don't try and negotiate a salary before they've decided on you, because they might be thinking about someone else or thinking about you, and you might be, we could pick this person, could pick this one, and then if you start negotiating pay in your interview, they're going to pick someone else. The time to negotiate, if you're able to, is after they decide that they want you and you're the best. That's when you negotiate, if ever. So I hope you are successful in your Royal Mail interview. Best of luck. Thank you for watching this whole video. I'd appreciate it if you post below what questions Royal Mail asked in your interview, so we can share lots and lots of experiences and help everyone out in preparing for their interview. And finally, thank you very much for watching all of this video.